Public speaking is by far one of the hardest and if not the scariest things out there. And trust me, I know from experience because when my first year in college, that was one of the classes that I failed. And let me tell you, I understand the fear and where the fear comes from. And I tell you one thing, mine came from ego and pride. My first day in the classroom, and let me tell you this, there's a regimen that they do, right? They allow you to select the one that you want, the one that you feel comfortable with. It's a way of warming you up. And then they pick something, or they allow next student or one of your peers to select a topic that you have to talk about. And so my initial topic, the first one, was about the music industry. And what they didn't know is that two of my guys, Rick Steele and Ming, we started a production company together. And I was cocky as hell. I came out there because I realized that I was speaking on a subject that I knew. And the more I spoke about it, the more that I realized people in the class were not familiar, and I gained their attention. And you should have seen it. There was one girl that was sitting in the front of the class. She actually not only sat up, but she actually leaned forward to hear my conversation, right? And as I'm going through all this, the questions started to coming in, and I gained more confidence because I was answering their questions, and I had this bravado about me that I thought like, oh man, I knocked this out the park, like. And I didn't do no preparation at all because it was a subject that I knew about. And I was never put in a position to feel any type of fear or frustration. So the week after, we had to do part 2, which is the selection from your peers and talk about that topic. So I remembered specifically on the train, I was reviewing quickly as possible, right? But I wasn't really putting that effort. I was just brushing through the material. And then when I got to the classroom and I got on that stage and I had this big confidence, I'm like, I'm going to rock this. And once I got on there and I completely bombed. I mean, I was horrible. I was so bad that the same girl that was leaning in, that actually I was grabbing their attention, actually sat back and was like disappointed. And you should have seen everything deflated from her. And as that reaction crept into me, I lost all confidence. And it was the most scariest thing because I felt like I was on an island by myself at that point. And all the people's trust that I've gained from my first presentation, that it was all gone. And it was the loneliest and scariest thing. And then I ended up dropping the class. And I really, it really frightened me so much that I was like, man, public speaking is not for me. And I've never had that fear. I was always the one that like, yeah, let's go talk, let's go do this, let's go do that, because it was never an issue for me. And then after that moment, there was this fear that every time I would go speak, there was this hesitation. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And I get that. And I get people's frustration and I get people's fear of being judged, of being criticized, or not being a person of interest. But let me tell you this, there's several ways to avoid that trap. Number one, there is a such thing as beginner's luck when you're speaking on something that you know or you're confident about. Maybe you had a great day, you had this swag about you. But the second thing is you have to be prepared. You have to know the material. You don't have to memorize it word for word, but you have to know it enough ways internally that you could speak on it at any time. And that's one of the things that I've learned, that don't get stuck in your comfort zone. So when you get an opportunity to speak on the subject, ask questions, be curious, ask details, speak to anybody about anything. So if anybody were to put you on the spot, you'll be able to answer it. You don't have to be a professional, but you just want to get in the habit of speaking. So the more you do something, the better you get at it. And what I found out is that because I was put in these positions to having to speak, over time, that fear started to go away. I started to feel like, okay, I can speak here, I can speak here. Now, time to time, the fear is going to come. I'm not going to kid you not, right? But it's less of it nowadays than it was in the early stages. In the beginning, it was really like, oh man, like, do I have to? All right. Is it necessary? Can somebody else do it? Even though I was the person, I would always deflect it to somebody else, right? And I would say, hey, listen, I'll write the material for you, or I'll tell you what to say. But come to find out that over time, I just got comfortable. And that's the same thing of doing the show, right? After a while, you start to find your voice. You start to find a way you want to say things, how you want to say things. And that's the same thing about public speaking. You figure out different things from different areas. You figure out, all right, I'm getting better at my stage presence. I'm getting better at my delivery. I'm getting better at my projection. You know, those things are built over time through repetition. So you cannot stop the thing that you started. You just could build on it. but building on it through better mechanics and to avoid those two traps of A, being comfortable, beginner's luck, and two, not being prepared. Here's the contradiction though. In the beginning, you need to be stuck in your comfort zone because you want to speak about the things that you're familiar with, the things that make you comfortable. So the more you speak on something and the more you articulate it because you're familiar with it, the more it becomes common and you're able to address it to anybody. And then you move along. So the more you start to learn, the more you start to speak about other subjects, and then you could dive on whatever you want to dive into. But if you're not speaking and you're not putting yourself in these positions to speak in public, then you cannot build off that courage muscle. Courage is a muscle because it's built off of repetition. So the more you do something, it's just like reps, right? If you go to the gym and you're working out and you're building all these reps, it's the same concept. If you're going out there and you're speaking all the time, you become comfortable, you find ways of speaking, you find ways of bringing the animation to life through words, through body language, through sign language, whatever it is, whatever your form of communication is, you'll find different ways of doing it because you're building this repetition pattern of communication. One thing Juan said is the fact that there is no expert, right? Because you're constantly learning, you're constantly improving, you're constantly getting better, and you have to continue to do that. So my advice for you, continue your path on public speaking. Don't be afraid. Let me rephrase that. Fear is okay. Fear is welcome. But how you tackle fear is confronting it and building off of that repetition, like constantly confronting it until that time comes where you no longer need it. And that's just my advice. Thank you so much.